Alrighty guys, so this is the week 4 homework problem number 14. So in this problem here we have a couple of mixed numbers or mixed fractions that we need to multiply together. Alright, so when dealing with fractions guys, one thing that you need to remember is that we very rarely are ever going to want to have mixed numbers. So usually if you're given a mixed number, and you're going to have to perform some operations like we are here. We have to multiply these two numbers together. You're just going to want to go ahead and write them as just standard fractions right away. That's your very first thing. So that's why I have these two pieces written down here. We're going to convert 2 and 1/24 as well as 6 and 6/7 into a fraction. Alright, so the way that we do this, first things first, as with all things, there are some tricks to remember. The denominator of your mixed number is always going to be the denominator of your fraction, the resulting fraction. So in our first problem here, when we are converting 2 and 1/24 into a fraction, the denominator is going to be 24. Over here, our denominator is going to be the denominator that we see, which is 7. So now the question becomes, all right, that's fine. How do we get our numerator? Well, the way that we get our numerator is as follows. You want to take 24 and multiply it, which I'm going to represent by a dot here, 24 and multiply it by the whole number. So 24 times 2, that would be 48. And then whatever product you get, you then add to that the numerator that we had. So 24 times 2 is 48 plus 1 is 49. All right, and that works the same way every time. So we have 7 times 6. So 7 times 6 is 42 plus the 6 that we have here in the numerator. 7 times 6 is 42. 42 plus 6 is 48. All right, so our original problem that we had here where we're multiplying these two mixed numbers, we don't want to deal with that. We want to multiply two fractions. So we went ahead and figured out what those fractions were. 2 and 1/24, that is the exact same as the fraction 49 over 24. And we're going to multiply this fraction by the fraction we got when we converted 6 and 6/7 into a fraction, which was 48 over 7. All right, so these are the two fractions that we need to multiply together. So now, on to multiplying fractions. How do we multiply two fractions? I think multiplying fractions is probably my favorite operation to do because in my head it seems to make the most sense to a lot of people. Right? What do we do when we need to multiply two fractions? Well, we're just going to do what I like to call multiply straight across. You're going to take your numerator times your numerator. You're going to take your denominator times your denominator. And that resulting fraction is going to be your solution or your product of these two fractions here. So let's get out our calculator and see what we get when we multiply. Starting with our numerators first. We have 49 times 48. So whatever we get here when we multiply 49 times 48, that is going to be the numerator of our answer. So 2,352. 2,352. All right, sorry, I'm kind of mixing colors here a little bit. And that's going to be all divided by, and now we have our denominators. 24 times 7. 24 times 7 is 168. So 168. And let me check and see if the problem asked us to simplify. Ah, yes it does. Perform the operation and simplify. Okay, so when it's all said and done, guys, this here is an answer, right? And really it is the answer, it's just not the simplified answer. So that's going to be the last step to this problem. All right, so we've taken our two mixed numbers here, we have converted them into fractions, and we've now multiplied those fractions, and we've gotten this answer, 2,352 all over 168. So now, what we can do is we can start to find common factors that exist in these two numbers, and we can begin to factor them out. All right, so let me show you what this kind of looks like here. All right, notice that both our numerator and our denominator, all right, both of them are divisible by 2. All right, what that means is that there exists a number. When you multiply it by 2, you get 2,352. And you can find that by taking 2,352 and dividing by 2. So that's 1,176. So we know that 1,176 times 2 is in fact 2,352. All right, so it's okay to rewrite the numerator like this because 1,176 times 2 is 2,352. And we can do the exact same thing with our numerator as well. All right, 168, since it is even, we know that it has a factor of 2. And 84 times 2 is 168. All right, so the question might be, well, why would we ever do this? How does this help us? Well, guys, remember, if you ever divide a number by itself, like 2 divided by 2, that's just 1. All right, so really what is happening here is this factor of 2 really cancels out. All right, so what this is telling us is that 2,352 over 168 is the exact same thing as 1,176 all over 84. All right, we just took a factor of 2 out of the numerator, took a factor of 2 out of the denominator, and this is exactly what we were left with. Now I just want to show you this on the calculator so you believe me and you don't see that I'm just making things up. If we take 2,352 and divide it by 168, notice that we get 14. All right. Well, in this case, we better get the exact same thing over here. 1,176 divided by 84. Notice that we get 14. Okay, so now this result here, the fact that when you divide this number by this number, 2,352 by 168, that we get this whole number of 14, tells us something really nice in our simplification. What this tells us is that we could continue this process of factoring out 2's, and what we're eventually going to be left with is the following. 14 all over 1. All right, because 14 divided by 1 is in fact 14, which is the answer that we saw we should get. All right, because this fraction is equal to 14 over 1. And we could show that by using these numbers here. Let me get out my calculator again. So 1,176. If I divide an 84 out of that, notice that that's equal to 14. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of running out of some space here, but let's rewrite this up here. We have 1,176. And that's all divided by 84. And I just showed using the calculator that 1,176 is the same thing as 84 times 14. So So we have 14 times 84 in the numerator. And then also notice in the denominator that 84 is the same thing as 1 times 84. All right, so very, very similar to how we've canceled out these 2's down here. We can cancel out these factors of 84 up here. And that leaves us with our final answer, which we saw down here, which is 14 over 1, or just 14.